Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Million Dollar Media. I am your sometimes host, Emily, and today we are going to be talking about The Substance. Now, you may be wondering why we're talking about this movie when it came out several months ago. Part of that is that we have a busy schedule. We reviewed a lot of movies last year. But secondly, and more importantly to me, this movie is currently making the rounds in the award circuit. So I wanted to go ahead and record a review of it and get a conversation going about it so that we could talk about it prior to the Oscar nominations coming out and prior to the Oscar ceremony actually happening. For those of you who aren't familiar with this movie, it focuses on an actress in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, kind of the entertainment industry, who is beginning to age and sort of struggle with her age, even though I think she's only like 40 or 50 in the film, and it's Demi Moore, so she still obviously looks great, who is offered an experimental drug that will allow her to switch consciousness with a younger, more perfect version of herself every 7 days. So the movie is this sort of Cronenberg-esque body horror thing that's going on, and it kind of takes a lot of shots at the way that the entertainment industry views women, at the way that aging is treated in the entertainment industry and beauty standards and all that. It's directed by Coralie Fargeat, who is an exceptionally aesthetically inspired director. This movie has a very clean look to it. The whole thing almost feels like a commercial, which is kind of fascinating considering how gory and depraved later scenes get. As everything kind of goes to shit, it never sheds this aesthetic that's almost sterile in how clean it is. The branding for this experimental drug that she uses is all done in big block letters. It's literally referred to as The Substance. There's a scene in the movie where Elizabeth, that's the main character, her younger self, Sue, goes on a show that is quite literally called The Show. And the movie's third act is the sort of crux of it is this upcoming live event that's literally just called The New Year's Eve Show. It feels almost like a commercial or like parody where everything fits into this mold of simple, to the point, almost Occam's razor design. And it adds a very sleek, nice looking aesthetic to this movie that is just so well executed on. And I think if you're going to watch this movie for anything besides its plot, I'd heartily recommend watching it just for the raw sense of aesthetics that Fargeat is able to conjure into this world. It was very impressive. It impressed me. And, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. So I heartily recommend the film on that front. But I do want to talk about its story. I try to avoid synopsizing movies in these reviews, but it's really impossible to talk about what makes The Substance good without delving into elements of its narrative. So if you want to go in completely blind, which I recommend this movie, is the short version of this review. So if that is your intention, go watch it and then come back and you can sort of hear my thoughts about where this movie's narrative goes. But part of what I think is so interesting about this movie is the specific angle that it takes on women in the entertainment industry, how women are treated in the entertainment industry. Because I think a very surface level reading of this movie's metaphor and its sort of central idea that it has going on could come off very cynical towards women themselves, because part of what we see throughout the movie is Elizabeth, who's Demi Moore's character, who is the older self, so to speak, kind of devolves throughout the movie. She becomes obsessive. She becomes angry. She winds up living in the shadow of her younger self and even begins being like physically mutilated by her younger self, right? She has limbs that die. Her hair falls out, all this kind of stuff. And it speaks to this sort of anger and jealousy that is endemic to Elizabeth. I think in a movie by a less inspired creative or by someone with a less complex view of the subject, some of this movie's metaphors would seem like they're targeting women as the crux of the problem that they're showing. But I think if you really look at everything the movie is saying as a whole, that's sort of a limited or reductionist view on it. It took me about a day to sort of digest everything the movie was going for and actually get what they were trying to say with all of that. But it seems like it's not so much putting the onus on the women of the film for their behavior as it's showing that Hollywood and the entertainment industry sort of as this central focal point of evil, right, is creating a mind space, like a disease almost of the psychological variety in these women that drives themselves to do these things. And I think there's a lot of ways where you can see that in the movie. And it mostly comes across in Dennis Quaid's character, who, get this shit, is a corrupt, misogynistic entertainment executive who talks about how he makes beautiful girls and gives them careers and is like generally disgusting towards women. And his name is Harvey. So subtlety is not something in this movie's toolbox, but I think Dennis Quaid's character really shows up to emphasize that Hollywood as a system, as an industry, is what's causing these problems. It's not individual women are crazy. It's not like, oh, if you get plastic surgery, which again I would argue lies at the heart of what this film is trying to be a metaphor for. I don't think it's calling out those people as being the problem so much as it's saying the mindset and the industry and all of that creates the need for women to do this, that makes people feel like they have to do this, is the problem itself. And I think nowhere is that clearer than towards the movie's ending, which I will get into. So once again, if you listened up to this point because you didn't want to go in blind, that's awesome. But I am going to be diving into fairly spoilery territory now, partially because I am going to discuss one of the film's more controversial aspects. So if you're not interested in that, don't listen. Go watch the movie. I will say before I dive into spoilers, I do heartily recommend this movie. I think it's extremely fascinating to watch. If you're interested in following the awards circuit this year, I think that you should definitely not miss this movie. Don't discount it just because it's horror. It's been making a splash at other award shows. It cleaned up pretty well at the Golden Globes. So I highly recommend going out and watching this film, if for no other reason than because it's a good movie and it will sort of give you a nice extra oomph to the lineup of 2024 award season films. So now to get into spoilers, the movie's ending was, to me, the most controversial and difficult part of the film to parse. I loved this ending, personally, but the two people with whom I watched the movie, my mom and her husband, did not enjoy the ending of the movie at all. And the reason for that is it's... Again, if you have no intention of seeing this movie and you're just listening for a quick synopsis, the movie devolves into this bizarre practical effects gore nightmare towards the end, where the younger self, Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, takes the substance herself because she feels the need to be more beautiful. She needs a new self. And she creates this sort of monster mutation other self, and it drags itself on stage to the New Year's Eve show. And there's this massive sort of breakdown where she's attacked by people in the audience who think she's hideous and a monster, and she begins bleeding, and she sort of projectile bleeds all over the audience. And it only escalates from there. But what the criticism that I've heard of this ending, which I do think that there's some value to, is that it is extremely over the top. And it is, right? Like there's no getting around that. But I don't necessarily think that going over the top was bad for this kind of ending because it makes an impact, right? Like I think there's an argument to be made that this movie wasn't a genre horror movie by its intention. It certainly uses the aesthetics of a horror movie. It certainly has scenes that are frightening, but it's much more concerned with delivering its central metaphor and making its point than it is with being a genre flick. If you're interested in watching a genre horror film, something like Smile 2 is going to be a lot more up your alley, but what this wants to do is tell its story. And so when it devolves into this chaos and blood and guts jamboree that shows a woman who has pushed herself to the brink with her own beauty again and again and again until she's become a monster and literally physically bleeds out on her audience. It's a powerful metaphor. To me, it was a powerful, striking sequence that really sort of struck a home run as to what the film was actually trying to say. I think you would be hard-pressed to find a movie that delivers its message with less subtlety. It is abundantly clear what Fargiat is trying to say. And if it wasn't already clear, the film's last shot really strikes home the last bit of ambiguity about what it was trying to say. And I think that that's great. I am on the record as having enjoyed movies that do not utilize subtlety. I think subtlety can be a useful tool in writing, but I think if you want to get your point across, fucking go the whole 9 yards. And Fargiat takes that mentality and just runs away with it in this sort of beautiful mess of an ending that I absolutely loved, and I think the film was all the stronger for it. So that's sort of what I loved about the narrative of this film and the metaphor and the writing that really worked together. But I do also want to call out the acting by the two female leads, Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore, who both brought fantastic performances to the table for this movie. Demi Moore especially, I think, brought out something truly brilliant and terrifying and excellent in this film. She sells this character of Elizabeth so well, so heartbreakingly effectively. There's a particular sequence in the movie where Elizabeth is scheduled to go on a date with a guy that she went to high school with. because while the world has moved on to see Sue, this sort of newer, younger, sexier girl, this guy that she went to high school with still sees her as a person and sees her as beautiful. So she's like scheduled this date with him. And every time she tries to leave for the date, she has like a freak out about looking wrong and goes back to change her makeup. And the way that Moore plays the sort of psychological devolution throughout the scene is every time she changes her makeup, she becomes sort of angrier and more upset and like is having this freak out. It's just so amazingly performed. And I can't think of anyone who could bring to the table what Demi Moore did for this performance. So it was utterly excellent. I would not have changed a goddamn thing about her performance. And if you ask me, I think she's going to be a shoo-in for acting awards this year. She already won for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy at the Golden Globes, and I have high hopes that she's going to continue that path to the Oscars. On that note, I do want to sort of introduce a little segment to these reviews. I have several other reviews of award circuit movies coming up. So what I want to do to sort of make a tail end to this review is talk about the Oscars, the upcoming award ceremony, and the path that I foresee these movies having to getting those awards. So where I think The Substance is going to shine is in the cinematography category, obviously. As I mentioned, this movie has such a striking aesthetic. It has so many memorable, weird, well-done shots that I think it's going to be pretty competitive in that category. It's also, to me, going to be pretty competitive in original screenplay, if for no other reason than the fact that original screenplay is a pretty light category this year. There's not really a lot happening in it. A lot of this year's biggest movies were adaptations, like Nickel Boys, Sing Sing, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Wicked, etc. So that category is a lot more competitive. And due to the fact that original screenplay is a little bit lighter this year, I definitely foresee that The Substance has a path to at least being nominated for that award. Though I have a feeling that going up against The Brutalist and A Real Pain and Anora will make it a hard-fought win if it's able to win it all. Personally, I think A Real Pain or The Brutalist is probably going to be more competitive in that category, but we will have to see. Beyond that, acting is also going to be a huge component for this film. Now, Best Actress in a Leading Role is extremely competitive this year, with Mikey Madison for Anora and Cynthia Erivo for Wicked both being massive contenders for that award. And Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez is also the first openly trans nominee for this award. But Actress in a Leading Role, to me, I think this is Demi Moore's category. Mikey Madison is also an extremely strong competitor in the Lead Actress category, which we also have a review for coming up if you want to go check that out. But I think Actress in a Leading Role being such a competitive category this year makes it a tougher road for Demi Moore to win that one, but I personally still believe that she will. Actress in a Supporting Role is going to be much harder for Margaret Qualley to get her foot in the door in, even though I think she gives a stellar performance as Sue. I don't necessarily foresee a nomination for her, but I would be over the moon if she were to receive one. Beyond that, I don't necessarily know how much this movie has going for it in terms of other Academy Award categories. As much as I would love to see Farjia make an appearance in that category, I simply don't foresee it happening, which is pretty unfortunate. But if she's able to secure a nomination, I would be more than happy to see her win the award. So beyond that, there's not much more else to say about The Substance. This is an excellent, weird body horror film that is more than worth your time. Despite it being horror, it's not like the scariest movie in the world. If you're one of those people who has a low tolerance for like jump scares, this movie doesn't really have a lot of them. I also hate jump scares, so you definitely will not be in like jump scare hell for the duration of this movie. You'll be fine. Gore is definitely going to be the thing where if you feel like you can't handle a lot of icky body horror stuff, probably steer clear of this one, but I still recommend it. I still think it's fantastic. And it's well worth any amount of time that you take to sit down and watch it. This movie is available to stream on Mubi. That's MUBI. You can subscribe to Mubi to watch it, or you can do what I did, get a free trial of Mubi, watch this because it's the only movie that you really need to watch on Mubi, and then cancel your free trial of Mubi. You can subscribe to Mubi through Amazon Prime as well, which is how I watched this film. So like I said, that's a definite recommendation from me. I think The Substance is a very strong contender in the award circuit, and I think The Substance is a very excellent film overall. Even outside of an awards context, I think this movie would be worth your time. So definitely check this out. And if you're interested in more content like this, I will be hosting more reviews on the channel this year in 2025. I'm trying to step up and do more of my part to get videos out on the channel. So if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts on movies, please subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends. If this is the first video you're watching on our channel, welcome. Please subscribe. We have a lot of great people on this channel. We have a lot of great reviews on this channel, and we hope that you'll like our content and continue to listen to it. 2025 is going to be a big year for us. We either have or have coming out a video that's sort of breaking down what's going to be going on for us in 2025. So feel free to check that out as well if you're interested in seeing what we have coming down the pipeline. Yeah, please share this video, like this video. So thank you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.